Okay, so now let's explain how we're going to use the model. As we did in Principles of Economics, what we're going to do is what we call comparative statistics. We're simply going to start with one equilibrium on consumer choice, let's say A, in which the consumer is maximizing his or her happiness, then change something, what if, and then see what happens to this consumer equilibrium. For instance, let's say that we're going to change income. Let's say that the income the consumer has is going to increase. So all you have to do is to find out where that variable that is changing is actually in our equations in our model. And if you can see, our variable is in the budget line. And the M, the intercept, is actually increasing. So what that means is that the budget line is going to shift to the right. So you apply the change, the what if, and now all you have to do is to follow the model to see how the model will change. Now notice that if you shift the budget line to the right, you cannot stay in point A and be maximizing happiness because that point is not tangent anymore to BL2, which is the new budget line. So what's happening here is that if the consumer has more income, he or she will be able to move to an indifference curve. Remember that this plane is full of indifference curve, and we're kind of highlighting the one that is relevant. When the budget line was I1, the relevant when the budget line was BL1, the relevant indifference curve was I1, but when the budget line is BL2, the relevant indifference curve is now I2, which was not affordable before because the consumer didn't have enough income, but now the consumer can. So we're highlighting that indifference curve, and the consumer now can be at a tangent point in which consumption is at point B. So this makes sense. When the consumer has more income, the consumer can actually buy more goods, more of both things, and therefore the consumer can actually increase his happiness. So let's do one more. So what will happen, for instance, if the consumer, instead of increasing his income from point A, what the change would have been an increase in the price of X. So what if the price of X increases? So again, you would use the model to follow this change. In the model, the price of X is the slope of the curve. It's affecting the slope of the curve because, as you can see, the price of X is the numerator in the slope. And if the price of X increases, the budget line is going to move inside along the horizontal axis because the consumer is not able to afford as much X as before if it uses all this money for X. So as you can see, this new budget line, called a BL3, is not enough to afford the previous point A that the consumer was buying. So the consumer is going to have to reduce his consumption of both goods, in fact. Therefore, he's not going to be able to afford the I1 indifference curve. He's probably going to have to be happy with another indifference curve that was there before. It was just not relevant, but now it's relevant. And that indifference curve, let's see if I can draw that a little better. Let's draw that again a little better. That indifference curve could be something like I3. And at that point, the tangent point will probably have a little less consumption of X in relation to Y because X is more expensive, but definitely give the consumer less satisfaction than before. So that's kind of how we're going to use the model. It's comparative statistics like we did in the supply and demand model. We change one of the variables and then we see what happens. Every time one variable changes, we assume all the other variables stay the same. And that's what gives us the explanatory power. When there's more than one variable changing at a time, we lose explanatory power. So when all the variables change at the same time, there's very little we can explain. So that's why we change one thing at a time and then follow the model from there.